I'm Michael Klein, and I've been asked to be the host of this discussion about the Chanute Fiber Project. I've been retained as a consultant to the City of Chanute to serve as the project manager for the potential fiber to the home construction project. So we'll ask folks around to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about why they're here and what we hope to learn tonight. So.
I'm Linus Houston, 114 South Steuben, the voice of the working class Midtown section of Chanute.
I'm Greg Woodyard, 910 South Evergreen, and I'm the current sitting Chanute mayor.
Tim Egner, City Commissioner. I live at 219 West Elm. I represent the north side of Chanute.
I don't know that I represent a side. I live at 919 South Denman. My name is Scott McKinney, just a citizen wanting some questions answered, that's all.
And I'm Philip Cheney, 217 South Larson. Representing anybody, just myself.
West Side Elite.
Yeah. That's further west than I am. So. I'm former north of Cherry. So
all right. Well, thank you guys for participating in this discussion. I understand that there are a number of questions about the city's project and what we might be asking of the citizens to support or to at least understand about this project. Let me start off by saying that City of Chanute has been an internet service provider since 2005. So they have a decade of experience delivering ultra-high-speed internet service over the city's existing fiber infrastructure. And I guess I could also go one step further and say there's never been a customer that was connected to the city's fiber network that chose to leave the city's fiber network for service from some other provider. In the proposed network, the City of Chanute would hopefully retain the right to be the internet service provider, or at least one of the internet service providers over the infrastructure. Right now, we're assuming that it would be the City of Chanute as the service provider for internet connectivity, and then the network would be made available for traditional voice and video services to be delivered by third parties over the city's fiber infrastructure. So the city is not planning to invest in a telephone switch or a video head end, but would potentially contract with a third party to make those services available over the network. Yep.
I have a question. You said that since 2005, the City of Chanute has provided high-speed internet. Wasn't the fiber at least initially run in the 90s, and that they were providing internet through the schools, I think the hospital, and the community college well before 2005?
The city installed its first fiber network in 1984. So they now have 30 years of experience with the installation and maintenance of fiber optic network. That initial network was deployed to support electric operations and interconnected electric substations and power plants. In 2001 or 2, with the construction of Power Plant 2 and the combustion turbine, that network was extended and upgraded to an initial single-mode fiber capable of delivering the high-speed services that are available today. The first entity, non-city entity that was on that fiber was Neosho County Community College. They sent out a solicitation, and Chanute responded to that public solicitation and was selected as the low bidder. As I recall, the community college saved $60,000 between the offer from the City of Chanute and the next lowest bid. So it was kind of a banner start. And I believe that may predate 2005, but it would have been about that time frame. Now, I know in 1996 there were some discussions among the city, the school district, and the community college, and I believe the library about sharing services and doing some other interconnected things over the network, but I don't think they started delivering internet, where the city was actually the internet service provider until the mid-2000s.
But there was some networking
But there were
things that
some
were going on in the as early
network,
as the 90s.
I think that started in
Because-
1996.
Because wasn't there some of the satellite distance learning program at Neosho County that utilized in the 90s?
And I think they were
'Cause I
sharing
think I was on the board of
resources.
trustees when
Okay.
those initial joint or cooperating agreements were being done. That's the reason why I asked if it goes back further
Yeah, it does.
than that.
And now they share a co-location space in the retired Power Plant 1 building. So that's a co-location space that's been hardened that is used by the school and the college to share servers and equipment space and human resources in that technology arena. So thank you for that clarification. With that, that's kind of a brief introduction into where we are today. Currently, the city has deployed over 40 miles of fiber and serves a variety of community anchor institutions and some of the business partners within the community. As part of a pilot and test program, there are about a half a dozen residential customers kind of smattered throughout the community that were offered an opportunity to try the service, in part so that the city could make sure that the services that it was planning and hoping to deploy would satisfy the needs of the community. So there are half a dozen folks, and all of those folks now are taking service and have agreed to continue to take service, desire to continue, and have enjoyed taking internet service from the city. So,
Paying for it.
and are now currently paying customers of the city for internet access.
So we beta tested them after we already had the college, the school, the hospital, the...
The residential service, part of
What's
what
the difference between residential and commercial?
part of what the city has deployed, the initial network is what we call an active Ethernet network, where we have basically from a central point, then a hub and spoke out to those businesses. So most of those businesses are all using an active Ethernet network. For the fiber to the home as a cost-saving measure, we're looking at deploying what's called GPON. GPON network allows us to minimize the fiber construction costs and deliver services to each premise at a lower cost than stringing a piece of fiber to each and every house. Now, ultimately, there would be fiber, but we'll use technology called a splitter, and we would take one strand of glass out to a splitter, and then from that splitter, then there would be a dedicated piece of glass. But that reduces the total amount of fiber required to be installed in the network. And those residential customers are all on that GPON network. Now, GPON, that's the same technology that's been successfully deployed in Chattanooga and other municipalities, and it's the same sort of technology that Google is using. So it's a proven technology, and the way that works is it's 2.5 gigabits download and 1.2 gigabits upload shared among those folks that are on that splitter. So we're looking at a 16-to-1 splitter ratio, which is half the ratio that Google and Chattanooga use. So
16 per 2.5 gig.
16 customers per 2.5, but each one has the ability to individually burst up to 1 gig. So if everyone is on at the same time, which is statistically unlikely, and those that are on all hit enter at the same time.
Or they're all streaming
or they're,
downloads at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
and assuming
rare.
that they're all streaming different things,
Right.
because it would have to be different rather than the same. So if everyone's watching the same, Super Bowl, it's one stream rather than 15 streams or 16 streams, or if it's 2 or 4 or up to 16, then that's what's shared. The only time it really becomes an issue is if the network is constrained. And the way the network is designed, we think that those constraints will be very often eliminated. And we have the ability by the network design, if there is one particular heavy user within that split group, we'll have the ability to move them off and potentially provide them with an active Ethernet connection. So they would have their own 1 gig connection. So they're not impacted by their 15 neighbors, and the 15 neighbors are not impacted by them.
And it's still, so like say that, I mean, they're all coming off that same 16 people and stuff like that. If you have
Right.
5 people wanting to use a gig at one time, what does it break each person an equal amount? Or how's it?
It's
regulated?
dynamically allocated, and the way that's allocated is probably beyond a lot of our technical discussion,
Yeah.
but everyone would have a certain minimum. In this case, you'd be virtually guaranteed almost 200 megabits. It's 185, 186 megabits per user in that scenario, in that split group.
I noticed on that one when the joke of answers that were provided on this sheet, but it showed something about a minimum of 156 megabytes.
156. So if you take that 1 gig and divide it among the 16
Okay.
users,
I just didn't know if that was because a lot of it
Yeah.
was all whatever. But yeah, I seen that 156, and I didn't know if that was accurate or not.
which part of those answers were, you think,
I don't know. If
provided in jest?
all of them. I mean, I don't think I saw one that was actually. I mean, most of these weren't even the questions that were asked. And if they were the ones that are asked, then they're answered completely different. I mean, I started going through them and stuff like that, but I mean, I don't know if there's a one in here that's answered.
I think
Even
all of
if it
those
even
questions
relates
came
to
off
the
the
question.
transcript.
Well, then
From
somebody
the
have to
meeting.
reread it, because I definitely know most of these come off of stuff that I ask, and I know that I didn't ask how many 35 gigabyte lines per 35% of the people. That didn't make any sense.
Didn't make any sense to us either.
Yeah, so I mean, either I was completely, incoherent to just you guys. I mean, it seems like everybody else that watched the TV understood what I was asking, but apparently whoever wrote
Well,
these
what
up
were you
didn't.
asking? Can you answer
Yeah,
it
what
for us?
is the question? Maybe we can answer it.
How many gigabyte lines does it? Well, what take rate are we going with now? It was 35. This shows 45, and then I heard 50.
We've
Where are we
modeled anywhere from 25 to 65% take rates.
And what's that percent based on? Are you basing this on electric meters?
No, it's based
Or
on
homes?
potential residences and businesses that might take service. So
Where
there
do
are a
you
lot
get
of
that
commercial
number?
accounts based off
Let's
of
do just
the
residential.
utility services. So
On
be-
electric utility?
no,
Or
it
what?
could be electric, could be water, it could be gas. In this case, not every utility customer takes all 3 services. So it's based on the number of premises that could be served.
And what's that number?
It's something in the 4,000 range.
Around 42 to
42.
44.
4,200 premises, and we have 3,700 water meters out there. So you're saying that there's probably at least 500
No, I think there's-
residences
I think
where
there's-
people live.
I think there
They'll
are
take
more water meters than 3,700. I think that number's more like 5,700.
Well, here's the thing. I got from the city. This is January 7th, and this is from Tina, but it's copied to Larry, Sam, Henshaw, Pennington Bay, Rick Willis, and everything. This is residential, 2014 residential utility accounts.
Mhm.
Water, 3714. So that's what I'm just trying to get to. Like, I understand that you keep picking this number, or take rate has to be 35, 45, 50, but I just want to know, like, what number are you basing that on? I want to know, like,
Yeah, tell us what 100% would be.
yeah. Well, I just want to know. I mean, like,
or
I would take it that a residential customer would probably need water. I mean, I don't think you can go by electric. Electric's kind of misleading because of oil pump or gas pumps out in the field or
Right.
people's garage and stuff.
Yeah, there are a lot of commercial accounts that that's not a premise.
Mhm.
It would be a pump jack or something like that.
Right.
The total number, I believe that number is something in the neighborhood of 4,300 premises, both business and residential.
Okay.
that would be potential customers of the network.
But if I,
So you take 35% of that number.
of residential, because that's not the number that's in this breakout.
But
That's
you have
why I
to
was
think
trying
about
figure out
that,
what-
Jason, for a second.
Phil.
Oh, sorry.
That's right. I know.
My bad. The older
Nothing
versions.
yeah, they're definitely that's my brother. So.
You have to think about it. There are a lot of places, for instance, I believe Osage Village would have in excess of 30 premises, but I believe there's only one water meter, and I don't think each place pays that. So you're going to have the number of water meters will not necessarily match, because if you have an apartment complex, you may have multiple people. I know it wouldn't be the JUCO, but
Right.
just the dorms. If each person had one, you would have a premises that probably holds 500 kids, but there's only going to be one electric meter and only going to be one water meter.
Right.
So-
we almost
so-
have none of those. I mean, the dorm wouldn't even count for it.
No, I said it
Oh,
would
okay.
count. I'm
And
saying
then
is-
apartment buildings, it's not like we have an abundance of them. What do we have, 2?
Well,
I mean, pretty rare.
But the
We have a
number
lot
is
higher
Osage
rise.
about
Village,
4,300
which is the high rise, Safari
premises
West,
that are
you would
potential.
have-
But you're saying residential and commercial.
Residential and
Hamptons,
commercial.
The
If I just went with,
Hamptons,
like,
the apartments
just
by
strictly
the grade
residential,
school.
Would you
Well,
agree that, like, if they would
Plaza,
odds are they'd have a water meter? If it
That's
was a
7
Well,
that I'm able to
Then
list.
you got
The-
assisted
the-
living center, the old
The
grade
city's utility service area goes outside the corporate limit. The electric system goes 3 miles out, and I don't believe the water system goes that far out.
Right,
Correct.
so we're still
So-
talking that we're going to build fiber clear out to every person that has an electric utility,
Yes,
Eventually.
and that's
Yes.
part of the
Within-
19 million.
yes,
Yes.
And you think 19 million is too low or too high?
yes.
I think it is.
Then where'd we come up with 19 million if it's way too
Here,
high?
let me give you some of that. The projected cost of this network is $15.3 million in total. The way you get to $19 million, in part, is the financing costs and borrowing enough for a debt service reserve fund,
It's required by law, yeah.
which may or may not be required by law.
Mhm.
So the debt service reserve fund, it is possible that that can be eliminated. And there are financing scenarios where we can use private placement in bonds, where the total cost may be reduced from 19 down to potentially $16 million. Part of that $19 million is we had to go because of a 1947 law.
Mhm.
The city of Chanute had to ask the Kansas Corporation Commission for permission to issue revenue bonds for this project.
Mhm.
And that permission was provided by the commission, and they determined in their decision that it was appropriate or necessary for the city of Chanute to construct this network. And they granted permission for the city to issue up to $19 million worth of revenue bonds, which is what we requested. We thought that that $19 million would be more than sufficient to construct the project, and then if the financing scenarios came in and we needed to borrow the money for a debt service reserve fund or other costs of issuance, that's how the number escalated to
Wasn't
$19 million.
So
So
the
the
number's
smart meters in
accurate.
that too, though?
That includes
And now we pulled that out.
that includes $3.3 million worth of AMI investment. That includes almost
number's accurate.
15,000 meters.
19 million is accurate.
$19 million is
You
the
hope it's
high
less, but
water
it's
mark
still
scenario if the city finances it and funds or borrows enough money for a debt service reserve account.
So
Yeah,
the number's accurate.
So that $19 million is a real number. There is a basis for that $19 million. It is quite possible, and some would argue likely, that it won't cost that much to deploy this network, and the financing costs won't be that
But
much.
there's a chance it could cost more, like Provo, Utah.
Well, Provo, Utah, hold on a second. I've been hearing about Provo, Utah for a year. And one of the things that I did that you won't find if you do the Google search, you have to actually call and ask them.
Yeah, a number of people have.
And when I called and checked with them, when Provo, Utah did it, yes, our project would cost that much money and would probably be a monumental failure if we had not started running our fiber in the 80s. They were doing everything from the ground starting. They had no base already in place, whereas we already have things in place, and They were also using third-party contractors to be the vendors that had to have a profit, so it affected things that are completely different. You're
So you
comparing
don't
the
need a profit at all?
no,
Hold on,
what I'm
they-
saying is that they had to have, say for instance, we were going to use our potential fiber program, and we were going to use Cable One, and they were going to do it. So Cable One would have to charge even more than what we would charge, so they could make a profit as well. When
As
you
the
take
city.
out the middleman, and you're not having to add a third person to make a profit, it makes it cheaper. But the real issue is, when Provo did it, they didn't have already a 30-year worth of investment already in fiber in place. They did it starting basically at that point where we would have been in 87. So
I don't think we had that much of an investment in 30 years.
well,
mean,
I will
that's
tell you,
like
I
10
will tell you,
years, think it's
I know
a lot
that the
different.
last place in Chanute that gets investment, and I know what you may say, is the north side of Chanute. I grew up on the north side, you grew up on the north side. So you know what I'm talking about is true. The night I watched the O.J. Simpson chase at my grandmother-in-law's house in 1994, they were off of 12th and Lafayette, trenching and running fiber. So at least if you go back to 94, that's still where we are, where we were that much further ahead
Yeah,
of where
so
Provo you are. So at that point,
I'm
almost
just
the
saying that
whole
there is
city.
inherent risk to this.
There's
I
a
think we're
whole
kind of
shit.
acting like
And you can also look at
No,
the place in
absolutely there's
Iowa,
risk.
who is they're saying is a national example, which is a more comparable
Who?
city, I think it's
Cedar
Cedar
Rapids.
Rapids, Iowa, that was just on national TV about how it had helped how their city-owned fiber had helped bring new businesses to town, helped retain their kids who were leaving, got a presidential citation because of how well that went. Yes, you have Provo, Utah, that's an
Right.
example, but you also have
Yeah, I'm
a
not
place
saying
that's
that
closer
they're
to
all
us
bad. I mean,
that's in our region.
Yeah,
but-
Girard has it, Columbus has it.
But,
That-
and, Chanute has
Pittsburgh's
advantages in its utility infrastructure, and it already has rights of way, it already has utility infrastructure, it already has line crews and service trucks and maintenance and all of this experience. So it's not just kind of jumping out there blindly. The city has a lot of experience operating utilities. They've operated, electric and water and gas for a century. So all of that, when the city has these infrastructures, those minimize the risk. And we have all of those advantages.
But we
in
didn't install our
Chanute.
own fiber. I mean, a third party comes in. and
Third
installs
party
fiber.
came in,
Right, okay.
but the city has
Well, that's
installed fiber and does
Well, but
install
not-
fiber
yeah,
now.
Not like the long runs and stuff.
No, not,
those are
but the
already
city
done.
does
That's
have some of that.
The other argument on Provo, Utah, in 2004 is when they built their fiber network. In 2004, I remember 2004, we didn't have Netflix, we didn't have Hulu Plus, we didn't have all these video streaming networks that we have nowadays. There wasn't as demand for data back in 2004 as there is today.
2004, we didn't have high-speed internet in Chanute.
And they had a
We've had it
different
for 30 years.
legislative
No,
requirement.
I'm saying that was available for anything outside of
Oh, we had
government.
high-speed internet.
DSL just would have started in 2004. I know that
And
year.
cable, they both started the same.
Yeah, I know that extremely well because I live close to Southwestern Bell and we couldn't get it. We got it right as I was deploying to go to Iraq.
Yeah, and
So
I mean-
I'm very familiar with.
Well, so am I, because I had an internet service provider at the exact same time. So, yeah, I'm well aware of when it all started, too.
But so we are already, when they started, we were already in business for over a decade as opposed to when they were starting.
And there were other
And I
state
believe
We
also-
requirements.
started selling ours about the same time.
I also believe that we, also that's different for Provo, Utah, is we own our own poles. As you were saying, we
I
own
don't
our own
think Provo
roadways.
went aerial, though. I think they're in the ground.
That's a much more expensive
Which is-
construction.
I know, I'm just
And
saying.
so, I mean, that's what I'm
That
saying
can
is
increase
it's
your
also a lot
cost by
safer, too,
from
so.
4 to 10 times.
Yeah. I mean, there's some risk to putting on a pole, too. 'Cause
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way to.
Except
and as
since-
far as it may be, in 2004, I was running fiber. Not in Chanute, but I was running fiber. Yes, I'm a lawyer, but I was running fiber in 2004.
And if we talk about Provo, there were also state legislative barriers that stalled that project a couple of times and caused it some other issues that don't exist in the state of Kansas.
Right.
So we don't
But we'll
have those
probably still
issues
face-
either.
Do you think we'll still face the same obstacles they have? As do you think?
We've already
This is
crossed
totally-
those hurdles.
I mean, like AT&T and them suing us like they did Provo.
No.
You don't think they'll sue us at all?
No, I don't believe so.
Even
And-
show
and
the
in
roads
fact,
that-
At
They
the
didn't show up to oppose it. Why would they?
Well, they don't need. They can wait until it's over and then sue once we've got started going. So.
well, there's no basis for that.
They did it in Provo. I mean, they're doing it all over the country. Anywhere that pops up, they're their lawyers. I'm just asking because that's another unforeseen. I mean, lawyers.
Certainly,
We've all
this
got
is
our
a
jokes, but I'm
litigious
just saying-
society.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying, though. That there could be potentially, because Provo said that was one of their big faults, or one of their big things too, is when they got sued, they had to pay a lot of money to get through the lawsuit. I think they eventually won, but they still had to pay lawyers to get through it.
But now you've got
So there's another
precedents.
cost.
Now you've got precedents set though with Provo. You've got it with Cedar Rapids. You've got it with.
Yeah, I'm not
Chattanooga,
sure. I don't
you've
think
got-
they've ever won. I think it's,
Okay,
it's a
but-
stall tactic.
but we
I
are-
just wanna
we
make sure-
already
And
have
you
that.
even have not only, you always have the fear of litigation expense. As a lawyer, I can tell you that. Right now, one of the things you don't hear about litigation expenses was AT&T's attempt to sue Google for Google Fiber in Kansas City. It doesn't matter who does it. Anything you're going to do that faces some type of competition.
Well, that's what I'm
You're
saying,
always
though,
going
is
to have
that,
some
and they,
litigation
yeah, and they have a lot
But-
more
but
lawyers.
one of the
than
things
they
that
do.
we've already
when you're doing it,
accomplished-
when you're the first ones out of the chute doing it, it's always a lot more expensive. You know, I would tell you when Jerry Michaud is a lawyer who started, was now the Hutton Law Firm, when they started doing medical malpractice in the 60s and 70s, it was a lot more expensive then because people didn't have med mal insurance and no one knew what medical malpractice was compared to what it is now when you have insurance and things of that nature. We are in a situation where we're better situated to deal with that than they would have been in Provo.
I'm just
Utah.
saying financially. I'm just trying to see all the obstacles and stuff so we can get through them.
We've
all so
already
that we
crossed
understand all
a
that.
significant obstacle, and that was done in December with the Kansas Corporation Commission approval of the city of Chanute building this network. And it's great in their language that they determined that it was necessary or appropriate for the city to do this.
That it was a non-duplication of service.
That's correct.
Right.
And then also,
that satisfies a lot of those requirements and greatly reduces the risk that some other entity is going to come in and have any leg to stand on in a suit.
And is that what we told the KCC is that we're selling what? I mean, do you give them a price and a bandwidth that you're selling, and that's how
No,
they determine? that
one of the
it's a good
interesting
service?
things about the hearing that we went through is one of the corporation commissioners asked, he says, quite frankly, I'm not sure I fully understand why we're here, because this is an entity that we don't regulate, asking permission to issue revenue bonds for a service that we don't regulate.
Mhm.
Yes, we will give you permission to do that.
Because you didn't have to go through. That's what I mean. You didn't have to go through like
No.
setting certain prices.
No.
Greg's tried to get about 3 interjections there.
Sorry.
So.
the other thing we found out today is we've got on the short list for the FCC for federal grant dollars from the Federal Communication Commission. And I mean, I think if they're endorsing us and going to give us grant dollars to build this thing, it's
And we had,
We
what,
are
3 months
getting
ago,
grant
the
dollars?
We're on
state
a very
was
short
proposing.
list.
We're on that, we made that next list. And
That'd be great. I mean, that helped Girard and Columbus and all that. I mean,
Absolutely.
that was a huge bonus to them.
Well, we
Well,
had the
and-
commerce
Well,
grants that
push
were
it hard.
available that were at the meeting, in November, where the state was looking, saying, if you're going to do this, you need to do it early, because the state has money that they can help to provide. I think you were at that meeting. I was there.
I think that's
Yeah.
all changed. If the state has any
But
money,
that's federal money that's coming through, so I mean,
Yeah, I
they
just-
they were a
Pipeline.
clearinghouse.
Yeah, just a
I'd be
pipeline.
shocked if it made it through Brownback's wallet. I shouldn't have said that on TV. So where are we at on like the meter charges, whatever? Are we with it, against it, for it?
well, I think that's
Yes or no?
I think that's still a question that is up in the air. Like you mentioned earlier, we've got one scenario where there's a 35% take
Right.
rate. It includes the meter charges of $5 for electric and then $5 I think for the water. So that's $10 per customer. Then we've got the other scenario where it's 50% take rate, and we're pulling those out, but we're still leaving in the smart metering. I still personally think there needs to be more discussion on what direction do we ultimately want to go. With the 50% take rate, it looks like a little bit of a larger hurdle to overcome as far as the cash flow scenario and cash flow analysis looks like. 35%, you have more room for growth. You have more room for revenue. Yes, you got a $10 a month fee on there for the meters, but it's more protected as far as income going forward. So I think ultimately there still needs to be more discussion on what direction the commission and the community need to go with this, as far as whether we want to charge a meter fee or we don't want to charge a meter fee, knowing that there's going to be a little bit more risk if we don't charge the meter fee because we've got to get a higher take rate.
Well, the reality is that we don't have to do the meters to do the fiber.
Well, right. Two different projects.
And I would say, just like we've talked about, one of the things that I think the city should consider is we've talked about a buy rate and options of taking fiber to the home. Is I think one of the things I've not really heard discussed is the option of making it optional to take fiber to, or take the smart meters to the home. I would probably elect to say I would like to have that. And part of the reason is that if you've ever had a water line burst and you're out of town during the winter, it's my understanding with the smart meter, they can see the usage and turn your water off remotely and not have to come around. I've been through that. Or if you have issues where you have someone who is having problems with their electricity, there are some benefits to that. I can tell you, gas leak. I'm not saying that I would want to go and put that on you, Phil, but I would tell you I would like to see us have that option of fiber to the home so I could make that choice. And that's the other thing that I think is ultimately, when you look at this as an issue of bond money, it is still an issue of choice. This is an issue of, if you don't get city utilities and you don't get fiber to the home, it doesn't cost you anything if it's on a bond, because a revenue bond is paid for out of the revenue from the item or the area that's being financed.
As long as it generates enough revenue to cover.
Well, even if it doesn't generate it,
then where's the money come from if it doesn't?
that's one of the risks that the bondholders have. They may have to raise the prices on that area to do that. But what I'm saying is you can't then raise taxes to cover that bond shortage.
Right. And we're putting it on the backs of our electric and gas, right? Why can we not borrow it just straight on the fiber?
We're mortgaging, so the interest rate is lower.
Well,
By mortgaging the existing infrastructure, that lowers the cost. And this assumption that, well, it's going to fail. Well, the city's operated utilities for a century, so I don't think. Well, I don't think it is.
This for 100 years, we've operated a complete monopoly service on everything that we provide now. Now we're going into a competitive market, and I think that's why you're hearing so much more from people, because you're not providing water, and you're the only one in town, and people have to take it. You're not the only one, or we're not the one that's providing gas that everybody has to take, because you can't have propane in your yard. Electricity, you can't get it from anywhere else. So I mean, it's a lot different the last 100 years on what we've done with all the monopolies that we have, which are fine because they're great and they provide very well and stuff. But it's just now we're coming in. Like you said, if this was 15 years ago when we started doing it, I think that would have been the opportune time to do it. Before Cable One came in, before AT&T started putting all their DSL in the thing, that would have been the time. I mean, I know the bandwidth requirements weren't there yet. People would have gone because they wanted high-speed internet. At that time, you would have been the only one.
I would disagree to say when you say that
going, and now we're wanting to get it. So I think that's why we get more feedback.
the city wouldn't be a monopoly on fiber, but to say that there's real competition for the cost, I don't think is an accurate statement.
Well, I don't think the costs are
I would
outrageous,
tell
so
you,
that's
what I'm saying is if they're going to offer it for $40 a month, I know I can't tell you what cable is because I don't have cable. But there's DSL at my private office on Main, and there's DSL at my house, and we've had DSL at the church. And I know what we pay, and I know what we pay compared to what we could get if we had fiber through the city. We would be gone from AT&T in a heartbeat.
Right, but I don't think we can afford. I mean, that's what.
So hold on.
Because
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, go for it.
What would stop AT&T from coming in and saying, okay, we'll offer it for $20?
So here's the argument. How's that bad for a citizen of Chanute?
It's not. But if
It's
they come in and
good
start
because
offering
it
it for $10
leaves-
a month, nobody's going to buy.
It leaves another $20 in their
That's why
pocket
we've
each
got to
month.
be
But
somewhere.
AT&T won't offer
You're not going to do
that.
it for $40.
But here's where you're wrong about that, because I've had cable and I've had the cities. I don't care if they came in and offered it to me for $10. I'm going to pay that $40 because my speed is so much faster, so much better, so much more dependable.
I'm not
I
saying it's
don't.
not.
Well,
What I'm
so you're saying
is
if you
it's-
no, I was
should be
actually
paying more
answering,
than $40.
and I would pay more than 40.
Then you
But
should,
that's what it was
because nobody's
offered.
ever said it that we should.
And if
charge
it goes
$40.
up, I'll go up with it. But that was answering Scott's question was if somebody comes in, if AT&T lowers it, once you have this service and it's so much superior than what is out there, you will not want to give this up.
The other thing you have to remember, you asked about AT&T. They do have UVerse. If it's fiber backed, it doesn't work. So that would.
Yeah,
I
that's not-
have
that's not it.
2 locations. Both are business locations. We have Uber's and it works fine.
Well,
Yeah,
what
now
I'm,
people have switched
no,
to
what I'm saying is, you may say
Extremely
it
reliable.
works fine. I will tell you because I live in my house has UVerse, and our office has it. And there is not another business closer to Southwestern Bell than where my office is. And I'm the first house on the pipe going south that has UVerse. And what I will tell you is our service always goes down on a routine basis, especially at night. And and I know what we pay, and I know the bandwidth that we get is nowhere near what we could get through there. And because of what I do for a practice, I have a higher bandwidth requirement. If I'm going to talk to a client that lives in Girard on a domestic case, I use Skype quite a bit, or I use FaceTime on my iPad. It's pretty sad, but I really struggle to be able to do that on AT&T UVerse for what we pay. Now, I don't know what your business has to use that for, but I will tell you, if it's just surfing the internet or doing eBay, it's not necessarily a problem except for when it nightly goes down. But what I'm saying is that I have discovered that when we have things locally, we get a faster response. I will tell you, I've heard people complain about both of our other service providers and the issues they have if things go down, them getting a response. And I will tell you, one of the things I told people in Iraq, when you compare a National Guardsman heavy equipment operator as opposed to an active duty heavy equipment operator, that National Guardsman heavy equipment operator is taking care of county roads. And if the county roads aren't taken care of, they have to answer to elected officials who go berserk. The person who's on active duty doesn't have to answer to anybody. If you have complaints about the way your service is from a private provider, you can yell and complain, but they aren't here. But if you get upset with the way the service would be provided here, you have two incumbents and one candidate. You can't really go to the owner of Cable One or the people who are elected to manage that or to hire the manager to do that and say, I'm upset with my service, come take care of it. You can do that when you have it, when it's being run. That's why if you look at, you compare our city utilities,
Right.
and I know you say it's different,
yeah.
the services are better than
Oh, I
any
know, I'm not
utility
saying
service
that
you'll
they're
get
not.
around.
I'm more about
To go back to the question, though, first, Kansas Corporation Commission said that we're not duplicating the services that are offered by these incumbent providers. Right. Secondly, at the Kansas Broadband Summit in January, the president of AT&T Kansas said, we're not coming to Chanute. We're not going to deploy fiber throughout Chanute. We're not doing it.
What do you mean?
That was
Fiber network similar to the cities.
Right.
Okay.
They're not planning to do what the city
UVerse, they are
wants to
laying
do.
fiber.
They do some fiber,
Right.
but they are not planning
right,
to
that's what I'm
do
saying. Yeah,
what the city is trying to do.
Right, and they're two totally different
And
models.
if they start to offer a lower price in Chanute to be competitive with Chanute, then they're going to have that same problem statewide. So I think that there is a certain minimum threshold that AT&T is going to have to maintain, so they can't just come in and cherry pick Chanute, can't target Chanute.
I believe their
ratepayers.
KCC requirement says it has to be universal across the state.
Right.
So if they come in,
they have a much broader footprint than just Chanute. So they can't just come in and say, well, we don't like what Chanute's doing, so we're going to really lower our prices, because they have to offer then those prices elsewhere in the state,
and, I think
they're not
they offered
interested
some
or
sort of
able to
special
do that.
deal to them, try to undercut
right.
Google.
And the other thing is they still would also have to do a fiber infrastructure investment that they really, to the level that would be competitive with Chanute, have not made. So they would have to cut the price and then also spend the money.
But you're sure that the demand's in Chanute for this?
Yes.
Yes.
Based on the
Yes.
surveys.
Yes.
Based on the surveys.
How many
Well, how many
surveys?
surveys came in?
Oh, well, they're enough to be
Approximately.
statistically relevant. I can't tell you the numbers.
I heard
But-
1,000 at one point. I
Oh,
mean,
God.
Well, I don't know.
I don't think there was even 100, was there?
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
know there
yeah.
was more than 100. But since
And they came from mostly businesses or residential?
it was a combination.
Yeah.
The studies that have been done and the surveys that have been taken, and there have been at least a half a dozen, every single study and every single survey that's been taken since we started investigating this over a decade ago, all of them have said, this looks like a good idea. This is a good business case for the city of Chanute. We believe that it's an economic winner. Every single one of those scenarios, either the take rates were verified or at least given some credence, for the economic analysis. And there's been several different entities retained. So it's not just my opinion or some other single entity. There have been multiple engineering firms retained, a variety of different experience levels retained by the city to investigate all these different scenarios. And every single scenario, or not every single scenario, every single study, the end result was this is a positive thing for the community.
And I mean, probably, I just think it's amazing that before we showed up and asked questions a couple months ago and got accused of pushing personal agendas, we'd asked the question about meter charges that were never really discussed prior to that. And it was already part of the model and going through. Now, all of a sudden, well, now we need to have more discussion on that. Why can't we just have a vote on it?
What we did is we went
Can't we get
through
an
and
actual
said
plan?
that the actual, well, there are plans. We have a variety of scenarios. There are
And that's what's
plans,
confusing to
and
people.
that's what's confusing. We have studied this, 46 ways from Sunday.
Right. But I mean, why can't
So-
we hone it in on one and say, this is what we're doing?
Well,
Now
right,
let's explain it and let's move on. Instead of, well, now maybe we need 50% take rate.
we're looking at a $15.3 million construction project. Right now, the target is $40 a month for internet service within the city limit, $50 a month for a residential customer outside the city limit, and we're still trying to define what a small business is. And that is, at this point, we've been given a target of $75 a month. That's in part to promote economic growth and to really help the business community within Chanute and the immediate surrounding area. Because all of those dollars that we invest in this network are going to remain local. Those dollars that you pay to Cable One are ultimately going to Phoenix and their stockholders rather than the residents here in Chanute. So
Yeah, I mean,
a substantial portion of that stays here.
Right, but a substantial amount's going to go out. I mean, because you got to buy the lines, you got to pay for.
That's
obviously our construction. All the people, consultants now are mostly all Kansas City. I mean, the two
One
that do
comment-
any other ones.
One comment you made was that why can't we get a plan? We had a plan. To me, it was a good plan. Now, there was enough people that started complaining, and that's their right, that's fine. So we've adjusted the plan. But to say we didn't have a plan is completely
No,
false.
and that's not
We
what I
had
said.
well, that's what you said. You
Then
said
why
we
didn't you
didn't have a
stick to one
plan.
He said,
Because
pick a plan.
enough
Yeah.
people,
We
had a plan picked. That's what we were going
But it's
with.
ironic that all of a sudden.
And then
it
enough
changed.
people, and that's because with being elected, that's where you have to start changing.
But at that meeting, you
People
said
were
you
starting
hadn't
to-
spoken to a single person that was against the fiber. Now all of a
I
sudden, you're
haven't.
changing the plan
I still
to
haven't.
adjust for the people that are complaining. We
That-
just had a number of people came to complain.
They're
The
in
people
the
are talking
paper,
about.
people in the paper,
Mhm.
people here, they haven't called me to complain.
Well,
I've not had
they don't
anybody
think
call
you'll
me
listen,
to
I don't
complain.
know.
So
I've heard from
that statement's completely true. Now, some people are writing in, things like that. So there's some concern out there. So now we're trying to change things up. But to say that we
So
don't
what's
have a
the new
plan,
plan?
we did have one.
The new
The
plan
plan
is
is ultimately
See, we
a
don't
plan.
know. You can tell us from your body language that we don't have a plan right now.
Hold on, hold on.
Let us finish just a second.
Ultimately, the long-term plan, and this is a long-term goal of mine, long-term planning in my mind, my estimation. I live my life on a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 20-year plan. My 20-year plan for the city of Chanute is to be fully operational on its utility infrastructure, and that includes fiber. I don't want to charge a mill levy anymore. I don't want to have to charge property taxes anymore. I want this plan to be fully owned and operated through the utility infrastructure that we have. We're one of the lowest utility providers around the area. If we do this fiber thing, that'll be another revenue stream in 20 years. Yeah, it's going to take 20 years to pay for it, but it's going to be another revenue stream thereafter. It's going to keep all those dollars local. And what other way or what better way could we as a community say, hey, come build your business here because we're not going to charge you property taxes as a city.
I totally agree.
So that's the long-term
That
plan.
would be a great thing, but I mean, let's just take our electric for example right now. I mean, I brought it up a few months ago and stuff like that. That the electric utility is losing $400,000 a year. Has the last 2 years in a row. So it's down to what $175,000 in the bank at the end of last year and stuff like that. I mean,
That's
It's
because
not-
it transfers.
It's
not
that's
losing
be-
why
money.
have we not fixed that?
They're
That's
not losing
because
money.
Really, because it had over $4 million in it like 5 years ago, and now it has
You're transferring out. You're not
$175,000.
losing money. You're still making money. You're
Well,
just
if you had
transferring it into
$5
the.
million 5 years ago, and now you have 175,000.
You're transferring it
Well,
out to
paid-
keep
If
taxes.
you
Now
have,
we're down to
if you have
$140
$140 million in a state highway fund and you don't do another highway construction but you move it to pay for a $400 million deficit.
So what have we paid for with that $5 million?
We've been paying $3 to $4 million a
And we
year
have for
to
10
pay
years.
down the bonds. No, we haven't.
No, we have
You want
not.
to see the bond editors? That's what I got the other day.
2008,
It's
you
the same
guys,
thing.
2008, you reissued the bonds on the power plant, the Power Ash Grove. At that point in time, you were paying only interest only. You guys switched it to principal and interest at that point in
And we
time.
paid $4.6
And that-
million that year. And in 2015, you have budgeted 5.1. So,
Because they
That's
so
not
you're losing
fair.
over. We're shedding.
So
and
that
that's in
started-
electric.
So that started in 2009 where we started paying the principal down. We've been paying $4 million a year to pay down those bond
And that's
debts,
what we were paying in
to
07,
pay the principal.
08,
And it was to
09,
save money
13,
on interest costs.
11.
and to pay it early.
Right. We're still making the same payments that we were making before.
And that might,
It's the same indebtedness. And let's not get back into that because we're not paying extra. I mean, we're
but,
paying
but,
the debt.
but, but
And
you're
we're
saying,
within 5
you're
years
saying
of
the
paying off all
electrical
of our debt.
utility is losing money, but it's not. It's paying down a debt load. Cash basis accounting,
All that debt's
you
not
got
coming out of the electric
revenues,
utility.
you got revenues and expenditures. When you transfer something out of a utility, that is an expenditure. Granted, you
That's
transfer.
been going on for 20 years.
No,
Since-
it
You
hasn't
guys
been
act
going
like
on
this
for
is all
20
new
years.
stuff. I mean, I'm just saying though that I would like to
Prior to
focus on
that,
what
you're
we've got
paying
right now.
interest only. Prior to that, you're paying interest only on that bond debt.
On which bond?
On the 24 million that was issued back in 2001 to build the power plant over there by Ash Grove.
Well, it was like, yeah. What point was it interest only?
It was interest only for the first 10 years to get them off their abatement.
For
Then
10
we'd have the
years.
property taxes coming back in to pay the
And what
bond
year
issue.
was that built?
It was built in 2001.
So then how are we paying for it? We're not paying any more now than we were before.
Yeah, we are paying more now because you guys reissued that debt in 2008 or 2009 to start paying
In
principal and
2010,
interest.
4.2.
Again,
and now we're at 5.
let's move
I'm just
off
saying
of
though,
that.
okay, that's fine.
Phil, you asked the question about the plan, and I'm not a city guru, but
Well, you want to be a city guru though. I mean, obviously you're here.
I'm here because I want to have fiber to my home,
Okay. Well, then then we can get
and
that out.
and I will
You're
not. I will
definitely
not. I'm
for
for
it. I mean,
it.
no matter
And,
what.
and I will tell you, I was for it in 1994 that we would be able to have internet, and that was when I was on Prodigy.
Yeah.
If that gives you an idea. But so I'm for it. What I will tell you is, if David Beddoe is an attorney just like I am, has practiced law longer than I have. But if you came and asked David, what is the plan to handle criminal docket day in Erie on Wednesday, he wouldn't have a clue. And not because he's not qualified, but that's not his area to handle things. He's a county commissioner. In the individual entities, it's our job to know that. And you know this as well as I
know that
do.
we need a. I mean,
But what I'm saying is that you've hit the commission for everything for the plan. But you know we are city manager-driven government. And yes, some direction comes from the city commission, but ultimately, the place that you should be asking the issue about the plan really would be to the city manager or the consultant, because you hit the people who come in once every 2 weeks and expect that they're going to know everything.
Well, they
And
should,
that's
and
not
that's what they
fair.
said a few months ago.
If you get
We
elected,
have looked this
be
upside
prepared for
down.
them
We know
people to come in
everything
here.
about it. That's why we're going
And
forward.
I would
2
tell
weeks
you,
later, the
and I would
plan
tell you,
changes.
any city or county commissioner who comes in and says they know everything that's going on is delusional.
I have a question about that subject then. You're saying that they don't know everything.
I think
About
they would
what's going on.
acknowledge they don't know
Sure.
everything.
I'll admit that.
So what gives them the right to vote on this and pass it without going to the city,
Well,
to the
nothing
people
else.
of the city?
That's the way we've set our government up.
That's
Yeah, I know, but you're
elected to do it.
Well, I mean, because spoke a couple of months ago about saying that blaming former commissioners for indebting the city so bad, and now we want to put another $20 million on the back. But why not have that to a vote? That kind of a substantial investment in our community. Why would you not want the citizens?
Hold on, nobody was
go vote on
blaming prior commissioners putting the debt load on.
Oh,
We were trying to
sure.
tell you why we're in the situation we're in
Yeah, I'm
currently
pretty
as
sure
far
that
as
was in the
cash
paper.
basis.
Yeah, that was like an exact quote. But on that though, I mean, why if it's $20 million or 19 point whatever, 15.3, what it is, instead, why not just let the people vote on it? I mean, I know it was said that the people don't understand it, but now you guys admit that you don't know all of it either. So why not let the people choose on
hold
that
on. Here's
major
how
of
this is different
investment?
than some.
And that's
The way this is ultimately going to be paid for is by those folks that decide to purchase the service.
unless it fails.
And if
And you keep making that claim.
Well,
But what happens if it's wildly successful?
I know, we gotta look at both sides. I'm not
But
just
I
deer in the
don't hear you
headlights that
ever looking
everything's
at
going to
only
succeed.
but the negative side. You don't
There
look
we
at
go with the positive negative
no.
stuff. But I'm
well,
just saying,
you're
you
saying
need
we
to
got to
know
look
that
at that.
there is the
Absolutely,
potential, right?
there is some risk. Absolutely.
So-
but I
so
believe
we'd be
that
dumb to
risk.
not think about it.
I'm not saying it,
Okay.
but there are both upside and
Yeah.
managed risks.
Right.
That's right. And there are several things that the city has done to try and manage some of that risk already.
Mhm.
Part of that is they've already issued an RFP for the biggest cost components of the network. So we have a good, solid price and a cost for the lion's share of the network. That greatly reduces the construction risk. We have also gone in and done detailed engineering design for a portion of the network to give us a much better sense of how those engineering estimates are going to end up during actual construction. So we've minimized that risk as well. So we can go in and we start going in, and it's all about trying to manage those elements of risk that are of great concern. And the greatest area that we have, the biggest unknown at this point, is the actual fiber cost, simply because it is the biggest single component in the network. Right now, that estimate is a fairly wide range. We've gone in and we have an engineering estimate that says that this network, the fiber cost for construction, is approximately $6 million for the glass only, hanging the glass on the poles. The current model that we're operating utilizes $7.1 million as that construction cost. So there's a $1.1 million buffer to help make sure that the costs are within our plan. Now, the other thing that's already factored in here is 100% deployment of the ONT, which is the optical network terminal that would go on the side of each premise. The costs for a 100% build-out are also included in that model. So we have just about put enough contingencies on this thing to talk ourselves out of a project that looks very viable when you'll use the more reasonable assumptions, things that we really expect are going to happen. The 35% take rate that was the basis for the initial presentation, if you will, to the commission, was a very, very conservative number based on Chanute's population. One of the demographic features that you have in Chanute is a very high density for satellite service, for video service.
Right.
Well, every one of those folks may be considering an alternative to satellite internet access. Many of them use DSL or Cable One for internet.
Right.
Well, the city is
That's me.
planning on providing internet service. So there is a very legitimate reason to think that, gosh, if we have a higher than normal satellite take rate for video services, then it is quite reasonable to assume that you would have a higher than normal take rate for internet, because all of those folks are looking for good internet.
Mhm.
So the national average for municipal networks is 54%. So that's, we felt pretty comfortable taking it up to 50%, even going in and saying, well, we'll eliminate this meter charge, even though that was put in under the guise we thought was a more fair allocation. Say, all right, well, if every utility customer is going to benefit from this, perhaps it is appropriate to try and collect at least a portion of this network
Mhm.
from those, and the meter charge seemed to be more appropriate than any other mechanism. It just was, well, here's a way, and it just kind of evolved into, okay, well, we can do this meter charge. There is already a meter charge that's $6 on every gas meter. So we didn't include any meter charge on gas meters and said, well, it is wholly appropriate. It is commonplace these days to see a meter charge on electric and on water. That might be a good way to do it. Well, in the voice of opposition, or at least there were a number of folks that we need to reconsider that, Said, well, let's see what happens if we go in and look at the model again, take our plan, and see how does that plan evolve if we remove that meter charge. And
About
let's
$10 million
look,
over 20 years.
let's look at what the impacts of that are, and will the model survive? Can we continue to recoup enough revenue to pay off our bonds over 20 years? And what we found is to do that, if we eliminate that $10 revenue source, we really need to be looking at some other things in the model. And that's where we said, well, what happens if we get to a 50% take rate? And that's the evolution of that transition from that $10 meter charge or collective, the two $5 meter charges, was reduced. And we brought up that, and yes, the model still does work. We talked about, at length, about taking it up to 54%, which is the national average. But we thought 50%, all right, we'll do that. Rather than the ultra-conservative 35% take rate that we had initially
At
included.
50%, what's the number of customers you're saying then?
50% is 50% of that 4,300 numbers, like 2,100 customers.
You're saying 4,300 is your number. That's what I can't ever get.
I think it's 4,296 is the number.
And the other thing you got to think about, the banks have looked at this, they've looked at the models, they've looked at every bit of this, and they're saying it's viable. It's not just them saying, we're just going to loan you the money, and banks don't do that. They want to see something.
I don't think any of the banks have said this is viable.
If they're going to issue the bonds.
But they're issuing
They're
the
not doing
bonds,
it on the fiber.
they're
doing it
issuing on
electric
electric,
gas.
and I mean, yeah.
But they're not going to loan the money
based on the fiber.
on the fiber project and being able to pay it back with that. That's what it's.
Is
It's
there
just
collateral? Yeah, there's some collateral.
And it's the
Well, it's all
electric,
collateral.
It's electric and gas revenue
utilities.
is the backup. That's right.
Backup,
Assuming there's not enough
So the bank, I mean.
overall, is the bank protected from these bonds?
No,
Yeah.
what I was going to say is the bank technically doesn't care about the fiber. I mean, they're loaning the money towards the electric and gas utility.
If
they're
they
getting
didn't,
paid.
if they didn't think that
But-
was a reasonable
but-
investment, they wouldn't
A bank,
they
yeah.
wouldn't buy those
If-
bonds.
if you were gonna-
but you can go borrow money on a car and take that money. If you own the car, you can take that money and put it towards your house.
Sure.
And
Line if you want.
they're loaning it against your car because that's your collateral. So they're loaning it against the electric and gas that have, that are worth money. They
Even
know
if
they're
they're
worth,
100 years.
and they know that they're good loaning it against that.
This is a
Right.
business model
Right.
too, though. So
Yeah.
if you went to the bank with a
That's a
business
fair
model,
characterization.
well, but if you went to the bank with a business model and they said there is no way that this is going to work, we don't care, you want to put your house up for it, your business is not going to work, still going to loan you the money. They don't want your house.
So what plan did you show the bank?
The-
I mean, if you're saying that you're showing them revenues on your business is the reason that they're agreeing to it, which one are you
The,
showing
fi-
them?
the,
The one that has the
finan-
meters?
the financial advisor has seen the scenario that had the 35% take rate and the $10 meter charge, and he's seen the 50% take rate without the meter charge.
And they're
And
good with-
and,
Where-
and we can make this work with that 50% target take rate without the meter charge. Now, at some point down the line, the city could revisit, the $40 a month or $50 a month or $75 a month charges. They could do a variety of things. They could sell off a portion of the network. There are a lot of alternatives to recover the cost, or if there is a shortfall, to manage that risk.
Exactly what Tim said, though, I think he's spot on, is that, I think we're too low. I think $40 for the amount of speed he's getting, 156, even at 156 meg is too low. And that's why I would just like to see the numbers be more accurate. I mean,
Well,
like right now, Cable One's pushing out 100 meg.
Well,
That's
that-
what they're starting to deploy their 100
The reason
meg.
we
I
did
think that's
that-
$100 a month.
The reason we did
So-
that was we were trying to be as conservative as possible with our estimates. So if we're going to estimate lower revenue to make sure the cash flow works, and it's $40 a month, so we can make sure that people take it at the take rates we need, that's why we're going to offer it at $40 a month to make sure the cash flow projections work.
But I don't think the numbers, I'm still.
Well,
But you want-
here's where that money ends up. I had someone challenge that. I said, my gosh, look at how much money the city is leaving on the table by only charging $40 a month. You're right. What we're doing is we're leaving that extra money on every kitchen table in Chanute.
No, because I don't
That's-
think this thing's
that's-
going to pay for itself at $40 a month, and I think you've almost admitted it.
Well,
We know
no.
that's too low.
Well, we believe that
Because
$40 is viable, but boy, is it going to be hard. Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay.
Well, we don't-
If you're suggesting that we move it to $50,
I kind of like the idea that, I mean, what was discussed, I don't even know who actually discussed it or whatever. Why do we have to do it all at once?
cheaper. It lowers your cost of deployment.
But then you're more risked way up than
And you
just,
get
like,
more
deploying it to
revenue
certain
early
areas.
on to pay off your debt sooner.
And we
Why
are,
don't you do a full deployment? I'm just saying, why don't you do more of a targeted
well,
deployment?
and we are actually, that's what we're looking at now is going in and doing surveys to find out who
Which area?
wants to be in, so if you've got 100 houses in this area, we're going to that area first.
Right.
And build that up, and that money starts coming in, we start making some money off of it. If you go to this area and there's 3 houses out of 100, then that's going to be the last place you go.
Yeah.
So we are looking at that target area.
Well, why can't
It's
we
gonna
do it
be
on
a- it's
smaller
gonna be a
scale, then? Why can't we
structured
just borrow
deployment.
enough and then start generating revenue and then start paying cash for the rest of our build out?
We
I mean,
can-
we're close to about paying our debts off. We're gonna have a lot more money, barring an appraiser.
2019.
Barring an appraiser mess up. I mean, we should have more money that we can spend on certain
Part-
projects that we can maybe pay cash.
But part of the reason, right now, the cost of borrowing money
Mhm.
is so low.
Yeah, I don't fall for that at all.
Well,
I mean,
I-
I'm not gonna run to the bank and borrow a bunch of money because the interest rates are low. I mean,
But if you have a big project that says, I could
I'd
deploy
rather
this
pay it by
over 5
cash than
years,
borrow the money even at 2 or 3%.
well, what, there are
once we pay off all the
situations
debt,
where
Greg, how much extra money is that into the coffers?
If you
If we're paying
increase,
off 5.3
if
million
you
a year.
increase your interest rate on a $19 million project just by 1%, you're adding over about $250,000 to $300,000 worth of interest expense.
But what if
each
we
year.
borrowed enough to do a certain deployment, and then we can just pay that off of the and then once we paid off all this debt, and then we start bringing in $5.5 million extra a year, and we start just paying cash for
Our
the rest of the deployment.
$40 a rate,
0%
the take rate number you were assuming was how many customers? I'm just asking.
21,
about 2,100 somewhere.
2,100. Give or take, and I'm just doing just simple math. I went through and looked at, basically, if you say we have to pay for financing and pay for debt, I used an estimate of essentially $1,250 or $1,250,000 a year
for debt service.
for saying for debt service.
Okay.
Saying that's by part of principal.
No,
part of
that's
interest. And then if you divide that by at $40 a month times 12 would be 480, and divide that by 12.5, that would mean we would roughly have to have 2,604 customers just paying the $40 a month rate.
And that's strictly debt service.
And but you're also.
No, that's including paying off that. I'm saying is
No,
that-
but I mean, that's paying the, I mean, then you got the lines you got to pay for, your gigabyte lines. You got to pay for maintenance. You got to pay for the employees. I mean, there's a lot more debt than just, I mean, we're not just have to pay the
But
debt
There's
service.
some
what I'm
operating
saying is
expenses
it's a lot.
associated
I'm
with
saying
that.
is that if you do a 19 million deal over $20 million, a 20-year 19 million over 20 million is going to be 950. So I was adding basically another $500,000 to say it would cover at least
And what-
the
A year?
debt.
What you're leaving out.
That's
though, is the
also
businesses.
$40. He's
Right,
not
that's what I'm saying.
including
I'm just
50
saying
and
at
not including
$40
commercial.
alone, it would be basically 2,600 people. But we have businesses that are paying a higher rate.
Which, yeah, will those be adjusted down?
They'll be adjusted down, but there's a whole bunch of businesses that are wanting to jump on it, which is.
I know,
gonna-
but I'm just saying,
So,
though, like,
He's
like,
saying the businesses that right now. are
like
paying
right now,
higher
what a
rates.
business
Sure,
is
you're
paying,
gonna
will
have
it drop to
Some of the
$70?
small businesses will have their prices reduced.
What's going to distinguish between a large and
Well,
small
we're
business?
trying to
Yeah, that's gonna
we're
be hard.
trying
I don't
to
think anybody's
find
ever defined
what a small business
So
is.
say Ash Grove is paying $400 a month. I don't think anyone would consider them to be a small business. Would they continue at a higher than a $40?
They are not a big internet user, even though they're a big industry. So we're struggling with
Yeah,
what's
right.
the definition.
But let's
of
say a
small
business that right now is paying, that would be a big employer that's that's paying the $400 a month. Will there be some of those that would continue at that rate? Is it?
Probably, yes.
And so that's what I'm saying is
Yes.
that 2,600 is just that if everyone is only paying $40 a month.
Right, but I mean, how many customers right now are paying the 400 or higher a month? Is that pretty much everybody?
Most
I mean,
everybody.
isn't it?
Most
Yeah.
everybody.
I say I didn't think there was anybody below that, but
There
how many
are a
customers are on
few.
right now? Paying customers. I mean, outside of residential. 'Cause Like commercial
I think it's,
or industrial.
I don't know the exact number. Oh, no, it's bigger than
Oh,
that.
really?
I think it's more like 60. I think it's like
Commercial
60,
customers?
60 customers connected to the network at this
Are you
point.
talking like each school separate?
No,
Just schools
no.
one?
One of the
There's-
comments that you made,
I think
in
there's
your-
close to 100 different connections right now.
Oh, total, like
Yeah, but I think there's 60 different
60 paying
customers.
customers?
one of the comments you made was that the internet's not made any profit. And since 2005, it's made $4.2 million profit.
It's not all profit.
No,
Well,
that's
income,
right.
not profit.
That's revenue.
That's revenue,
Gross
4.2
revenue,
million.
but in
How
terms,
much went out? Which will lead me into a good question.
Yeah.
We asked a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, well, 3 months ago, I guess now, how much it costs to build fiber out 2 blocks. And still never got that figure.
Well,
what
there-
is it?
there-
I mean,
that-
like building,
hold on.
building to
He-
Tim,
He's got the answer.
yeah, like building out to Tim's house, what'd that cost?
the average cost, because you have to know, all right, which 2 blocks? Where is it relative to the nearest splice point? Where is it relative to the central hub? Where is it relative to everything else? Relative to the existing pole lines, that sort of thing. The typical cost to connect a home is about $1,600 per home passed. It varies anywhere from $1,600 up to about $4,800, $4,900 for an individual home pass.
What do you mean by that?
So-
Yeah, I'm lost on that too.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, what
We're
did
gonna-
it
when you-
cost to
when
run
you-
from wherever it was to Tim's house? You've got to have a price and what
That
it costs.
That
I mean, I know his
price,
neighbors got it, so that helps. But
that's going to be a little misleading because part of the reason he was connected is he was right behind.
it runs up that
It was right at that fire escape.
fire escape, yeah.
So it was right behind him. So the cost of the fiber to get to him was, I think it's 160 feet of fiber to
Mhm.
go from where it was to where it is. The fiber was less than $2 a foot. The city's crew deployed that fiber and then installed that ONT on the box. So the total cost to connect him onto the network was in the hundreds of dollars rather than the thousands of dollars.
Well, but I
Because
mean,
that's
city employees
that's not a
time was
typical.
involved
Yeah.
and everything like that. So it's
Yeah,
probably
but
not
it was
that. You're
not-
just talking
but
about
not-
the straight
but not-
fiber
They're
was
going
only
to
a
get
couple
paid
$100.
whether
Yeah,
they're running the
Yeah,
fiber
they're
or
gonna
not.
they're gonna get paid
Well, I know,
regardless.
but we still
But,
need to figure that
you
into
need
the
to
cost.
fix-
We
yeah, we
can't
need
just
to factor
assume they're
all that
working
in.
for free.
But that's why the cost.
Whether they're running fiber or
cost
whether they're
per house-
running doing electric, they're going to get paid for that.
Right, but
There-
I'm
there
saying
was
as a
no
business
extra-
model. We're
there
not going
was
to say
no-
they're just sitting around
But
on
what
their
I'm
thumbs
saying
all
is
day. We're gonna
that
use them on
there's no
fiber.
extra money that would have been spent on those employees to do it because they were going to be
No,
paid.
I'm not saying there's extra. I'm just saying how much did it cost as a business model?
In
How
the,
much
in,
did
a,
it
in the
cost,
business
like
model,
labor and
it
everything
typically, when you factor in labor, construction, all the little attachment
Right.
points, that sort of thing, it's going to vary between $1,600 and $5,200, with the predominant number falling into about $2,200 to $2,400 to connect a home onto the
all the way
network.
from wherever.
From all the way,
Okay.
from one end all the way to the other,
Now,
taking
now,
all of the costs.
wouldn't that actually though, as the build out proceeds and goes out, wouldn't that get cheaper? So for instance,
Well,
where,
runs are
we,
runs.
we might
Well,
be
what
better
I'm
at it,
saying
so it
is-
might
is
be more
that-
efficient.
what I'm
if the-
saying is that to plug in, he lives basically in the right off of what would be the 100 block of North Steuben. I live in the 100 block of South Steuben. So to run to his house, it would be cheaper to run to Swinders, who live next door, but it would cost more to come to my house. But it would be a little cheaper to go to my next door neighbor's house than it would be to come to my house, because each point you put in place is going to reduce that cost. That's what I'm
Still,
asking.
I think it's a substantial amount of labor. I
To
mean,
an extent, yeah. There's a certain amount that
Okay.
that.
I mean,
but
the actual running of the fibers. I mean, it's the
we
terminating.
can calculate about where that is, and that's all factored into that total construction cost.
Mhm.
And it varies substantially, and that's why the question is, well, what does it cost to deploy 2 blocks of fiber? That's a very difficult question to answer because there are so many variables that go into it. So on the surface, it sounds very simple, but it is a very complicated thing because you really need to know which 2 blocks you're talking about, because it varies significantly. If it's 2
But you're saying
blocks
the
out
run
in
to
the
Tim's
middle,
house was $1,600.
no,
What'd you say?
it was
Or more?
well under $1,000 to get him connected.
And that's
well,
labor included.
Labor and
trucks
everything.
Because I know, I can't go too far into this, but of a company that had a piece of fiber ran internally inside their building, 380 feet, and it was a little over 5,000, and that was with 4 estimates. So I mean, fiber, it's costly because of the people that do it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I
varies a
assume
lot.
those people that drove down from Kansas City that spliced the fiber, or do we have somebody local that does that now?
Now, we don't have anybody locally
Okay.
yet that does that, but as
You're telling
part
me
of
they came
this,
all the way down from Kansas City, spliced fiber, our crews ran fiber,
no,
and we paid for the fiber for under $1,000.
those folks didn't just drive down here to do that task.
Right, but there's
The
gonna be a
amount of
cost
time-
what them doing.
Yeah, there was a cost for them going in
It
and
was
doing
under
that
$1,000.
splicing, and it was under $1,000 to do that connection.
For all of it, the fiber, the
The
trucks.
cost of fiber, the deployment, the whole bit.
I'd like to see the breakout of that if we
Well,
ever get bored.
Well, even if
I know
it's
you don't.
even if it's not though, even if it's not, let's say it's $1,600 to run it to my house. Okay,
Mhm.
you know about rentals.
Mhm.
Okay, you buy a rental for $30,000. You charge them $30,000 for the first month's rent.
No, that's
you
what I'm
pay
saying,
it over
$40.
time.
Right.
You pay it over time,
But you
and it
adjust
makes your
rent
money.
to make sure you make that payment and
And-
recoup your costs,
and-
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I question the $1,000. I just don't think that's accurate. But I mean, there's going to be a cost.
Well,
in each one of those
okay, well, we
$40.
could break it down then. If you,
Well, I
if
mean,
you don't
just-
think that's accurate, rather than just saying that, why not? Why don't you
Because I
think
seen
that's
5
close?
estimates that run at 380 feet, and it was almost $5,000.
Well, depends on, did they have to run conduit?
No.
Well, how long was the run?
380 feet.
Inside the building?
Yes. Which I mean, running it aerially and stuff is going to be just as
So,
labor intensive.
well, what kind of
inside the
fiber
building.
was it then? Was it plenum rated fiber?
No.
All right, so let's
There's a lot
take.
of
I know there is.
I
but
mean,
I'm just
so-
saying that.
Yeah, we can say, oh, that doesn't sound right.
Michael said about 2,300 per home was what his roundabout estimate.
Right.
So you're charging $40 a month. You're getting about $480 a year. You're going to take about 5 years to pay for the initial running of that fiber to that home. It's going to take 5 years worth of service.
But you got a whole lot of other stuff that does.
I understand that. So you got
It's not
5
your
years.
fault.
So you got 5 years worth of service that you got to provide just to pay for that one home. Well, let's say only 50% take it. So then you've got 10 years of service at that one home to pay for him and his neighbor who's not taking the service, but wanted the fiber to the premise to that home. So then after that, you got another 10 years worth of revenue stream coming off of that customer that's going to pay for your maintenance, it's going to pay for your new equipment, going to pay for your upgrades, and also going to pay for your debt issuance.
But you have a lot of that in those first 10 years too. You're taking it that it's only in the
Right.
last 10 years. I mean, the
But,
first 10
but, but
years.
I'm
just trying
saying
to
you got 10
simplify
years
the
worth of
math,
revenue.
Wilford.
You've got 10 years worth of revenue that you're not paying for the build out, and you're paying for your neighbor
But
also.
I don't think you haven't paid for your build out in the first 10 years either. So,
No, that's
I
not
mean,
what he's saying. He's just trying to lay it out so that
If it's
at
cost
the end of
$2,500
20 years,
to
you're
the
going to have it
house.
paid for.
In 10 years,
Yeah,
we'll have it
we
paid.
will.
And how much are, I mean, like right now do we have a 1 gig line or a 2 gig line? Because I've read both.
Well, we have two 1
Right.
gig line
And
connections right now.
And one gig is
One
tier 3.
1 gig is tied to level 3.
Yeah.
And one of the 1 gig connections is to Cox Communications.
And do we use both of them
Yes.
for internet service throughout the city?
Yes, we do.
So right now we're fighting 2 gig to 60.
Right now,
customers.
we are providing 2 gig. We have 2 gig available. We do not need 2 gig today, but we have 2 for reliability. So if one goes down, we have the second one.
So the
So
second
so-
is a backup or is it in current
they
use right now?
they are a concurrent use. They're peered.
So really
so-
we have 1 gig coming in.
No.
It's just on a redundancy
No.
or we have 2
No,
gig
we
coming
have 2 separate 1 gig fiber connections to 2 different tier
Right.
1 providers.
in. So we're using 2 gigabytes of internet service.
We
We're
have
providing to
access
60
to
people.
we have
Right.
access to 2 gig of internet. That's correct.
There are only 60 businesses, but he said there are over 100 connections.
Right.
So that means
And
more
the
than
city
60.
is using it as
But I'm just
well.
saying, are we using
Yeah.
1 gig or 2 gigabytes of internet service right now? I mean, do all these customers go
The
through 1
ag-
gig or
the-
2 gigs
The aggregate demand is less than 1 gig
of all 100 people?
of all the connections right now.
Well, that's not
So
100
but-
people.
Yeah, that- because the school
That's
district
not
would be
100
more than,
people.
would be more than.
there's
Right.
100.
there's
100
5,000 people down at the college. I guess.
Right, but
So,
100
yeah.
connections right now are running off 2 gigabytes of internet service
Yes, they have 2 gig available to them.
available to, so that all 100 of those can use
Yes,
up to 2 gigabytes. And that's sufficient to support schools, hospitals,
yes.
government entities.
Less
Yes.
than, the way I understood, he said
The
it's-
aggregate
the aggregate is
demand-
less than a gig.
The aggregate
Right, if
is
you said-
less than 1 gig.
So
And
then
that
do,
supports the high school, that supports the community college, that supports the hospital, that supports Erie High School, that supports
do a wireless
Erie.
link, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna
There-
clear that up.
It's
So many
it's
times.
it is a what the city has provided is the city has a microwave link from Chanute to the Erie
Okay.
water tower.
I just want to get
Then
that
there
out.
is fiber deployed in Erie from that water tower to all of the schools in Erie, the hospital, the
Sheriff's
ambulance, the sheriff's department,
Department.
maintenance barn, city hall, some of those Erie communities.
Right.
And the city is turning a pretty good profit on that investment,
Down there.
and it will be paid for within the term of the agreement with the school.
Erie
So-
School.
With the Erie School District. So the
And
term
I
of
just heard
that
so many
contract.
times they keep saying we ran fiber to Erie.
We have not run
Right.
fiber to Erie.
Fiber.
Well, that's why
Now-
I feel like, well, we ran it to Erie.
One of the things, though, that we're looking forward to is the change in the federal E-rate program, which may, in fact, allow us to extend that fiber all the way to Erie. So it would then improve the bandwidth.
Right.
Now, our microwave hop has been extremely reliable, but we'd like to have that so that we could redeploy the microwave from a different direction and
Redundant.
replace that with the fiber hop so that we have two connections into Erie to make
Which
them
is-
rock solid. Which is the same reason we have two connections, one to Cox and
Right.
one to level 3, so that we can provide an ultra reliable performance.
Now, some
So,
of those
yeah, I mean,
other,
it is.
some of the other customers or those connections are also Ashley Clinic or also Community National Bank. There are a lot of businesses that just don't have one computer in there. They've got 50, 60 computers in there that are running the internet simultaneously. And the redundancy is not more than a gig
Hospital.
current.
Yeah,
The hospital.
aggregate demand.
The aggregate demand is not more than a gig at one time. So that
Which is pretty good for 100 customers, and these are probably the heaviest bandwidth users.
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah.
I could
so to say that, I mean, and I'm just trying to be kind of devil's advocate on this one, because I mean, like, again, as I've said multiple times, that it's taken out of context, obviously, when it hits the media, but I'm not, like, against the, I just want to see that the numbers are going to work,
Mhm.
that we're going to be able to pay the bills, that we're charging accordingly.
Yep.
I would love to see a vote on it. I just think that something that massive, I think, ought to have a little more input than, you know. I mean, I understand a representative Republican, I understand how it all works and stuff like that, but I'm just saying something that large is something that could, I mean, you know, but I think that, like you admitted during the meeting and stuff, I think there needs to be more education to the people, and they would get behind it a lot more. And I think the more people get behind it, the faster your take rate's going to take off.
That's why we're sitting here tonight.
Right, and that's what
is
I
to
just,
help
and I just
educate
want to ask
the
the
people.
questions. But whenever it turns out in the media or whatever, which you know it is what it is, and well, they're just being negative. Oh, they're just against everything. Oh, they just hate the community and all this kind. No, it's just nice to ask
I'm
the
not
questions.
saying that.
So, well, I know because you know well, you do talk paper, but not enough. But whenever they sit there and say all that, you know, I mean, it's just I just want to make sure that the numbers are all there because a lot of people didn't know about the meter fees.
Right.
A lot of people, you know, it's just like, do we need that much bandwidth? Do we need the project? And I think asking questions isn't a bad thing. I mean, I think stuff like this, that's why when Chris suggested and stuff, you know, Scott chimed in, Tim chimed right in and stuff like that, Linus got, I mean, that's great that we can all just sit around. I mean, we don't have to hate each other after this.
Do
I
you
mean, I
think,
think we can
do
be
you
so-
think,
so- I
do
think
you
we can
think
just
there's
ask
much
the
of a
questions.
chance that we would have fewer than 2,000?
I don't believe so, but that's me.
I think, if my guess, I mean, I don't know. That's the big question. I mean, how many actual internet users are there?
That's where I want to cut in. Can we provide, I mean, an actual number of current households that take internet of some sort? I mean, is there a way to provide that number?
I tried as hard as
I don't think either Cable One or AT&T are going to give us that number.
Well,
or
Wouldn't you wanna know that,
or the
though? I mean, just
Wi-Fi.
yeah.
or-
Well, we know. Here's one of the
there are
things that
4
we know.
providers
Look, here's
that you
something-
can get internet here
here's
from.
something-
We know.
Everybody does
We
know.
know that 17% of the student population in Chanute has no connectivity at home. Part of the city's plan is part to improve education and to potentially turn the poverty cycle around, is to provide access to those students so that they would have access to the network resources of the library, the school district, and the community college at no cost to them. That doesn't give you internet access. That's an extra cost. But it would give you access to all of the online city services and the educational resources in the community.
so that they're at least
So,
connected.
so at least they have, so when the school district implements its one-to-one initiative and sends these kids home with these electronic devices, that they're not just electronic boat anchors.
Right, yeah.
They'll have some connectivity. And that's part of the city's plan to help turn the poverty situation around. Because to apply for a job these days, it's all online.
Yeah.
So you got to provide those resources.
So you said
The-
17%
17%
don't
have
have
And
no
that's
at-home
young families.
access.
And so what I was saying is just, you were asking about the take rate. So
I just like to know the actual number.
if
I don't think there's any
17%
way
don't
to
have it,
actually.
and that's just the school.
That's based on the
That's
school.
that's US. Is that all school kids or just USD 413?
That's 413.
So that means if you just say 413, I believe, I'm fairly certain we have at 413 1,500 kids total between CES, Royster, and CHS. Because if you
Sounds
think of
low,
the, huh?
That sounds low.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Low
yeah,
estimate.
that's
At
definitely
1,500,
considered,
83% would mean 1,245. That's just school age homes or school age kids
Well,
that
yeah.
have connectivity. Then that's not
To
counting
school.
people who
Yes.
homeschool. That's not counting. Well, and you would have some of that
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
But that's not counting Chanute Christian Academy. That's not counting
Pat's.
St. Pat's. That's not counting the people who homeschool. Those are just people with school age kids. Then you think of the people who don't have kids who still have internet. And that's the reason why I asked the question,
Yeah.
would 2,000 be a legitimate deal? You guys are projecting 2,300. Just doing the simple
Well,
math.
that's close to your take rate, right?
Yeah, that's
You're
what we're
saying
assuming.
50. So they're
About 50%. We're assuming right now the model we're based on a 50% take rate.
And see, that's where I think my big struggle is that I don't like what Linus is trying to go through right now is try to figure out like how many actual potential customers do you have? Not anybody, but I'm saying how many people have internet service right now that potentially could switch to the city of Chanute? And
And how many will take it's from the city of Chanute for the first time?
I don't know. I mean, obviously we have a huge population
The
that
reason
aren't going to take any sort of internet. I mean, they're just elderly and they don't want it.
But
I mean,
wait, there's
and
another
more
there's
than
another
that,
thing.
Yeah, I know.
And
Telemedicine, that's
For
right.
telemedicine and those sorts of things.
But
You
we're
know, one of the
late.
things that we've found is that reported
Yeah,
that
but we don't need
2
to
years,
utilize every house.
if you have broadband access as an elderly person, it may allow you to remain in your home
Yeah, I know.
2 years longer.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Well, having access to that, and again, part of the city's plan would allow those elderly folks to have free access to the hospital's network and their doctors if their doctors participate. So,
Just say this on camera,
but
they're concerned about
But-
the electric
but what that
bill.
does,
That's what
because
I'm
we've
saying.
already factored in the cost of the ONT on every premise, that's another variable that theoretically could be removed. We could reduce the number of ONTs that we've already factored in the basis of this model. That's another conservative assumption. That
You
100%.
wouldn't hook up every house.
Well,
if you didn't.
No, we would.
you'd have to.
We may not have to buy an ONT for every
Right,
premise.
right.
So, but the model right now assumes 100% build out. It's based on
But
100%
do you think
build
those people are
out.
going to pay for that telemedicine from their house to the hospital?
They
Or are you
would-
saying that's free.
The connectivity
Right.
Allows
from
it.
their house to the hospital would be free. They would have to buy their own appliances or
Well, right.
devices.
But I'm just saying that's
But-
not a potential customer, really.
We're not assuming
hold
that,
on.
and we
that's
didn't
what I think
take
Linus
any.
is trying to get to is like,
You're
or
saying-
like,
you're
Scott,
saying
like, how
elder-
many internet customers are there?
And what
right
I
now
was
in the
doing
city
is
of
that
Chanute?
I feel I believe the number of customers to say that we would have 2,000
Which is probably low, yeah.
is probably low. Sign up,
2,600 probably.
but let's just say it's 2,000.
That
And
makes
the
some
question that
work.
you have brought up about it's financed and it's based on the backbone of our utilities or whatever. If you look at a $19 million project over 20 years, and I'm not including interest, I'm just saying straight principal,
Mhm.
would be $950 a year over 20 years. If you have 2,000 homes, again, not counting anything different for businesses, just 2,000 take customers at $480 a year, because that's $40 a month for 12 months. That is $960,000. So the great fear of we're going to have this and the utilities would suffer if we get it, even at 2,000 customers, it's enough to make at least the principal payment, and then what would be having any additional help from the utilities would be relatively, especially compared to the utilities budget, minimal to make up if you didn't make that.
Yeah, but there's a huge other cost. I mean, I understand you're paying principal only, but then you're going to have to pay your interest. I just,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
we've
that's
got
easy to
loans.
But
But that's why I was showing that earlier when I said it
$40.
was $1,250,000 a year.
Right.
But
and
and
that's
I'm just saying straight out at $40 a month for 12 months with 2,000 people.
But you have to have you have to have 2,000 people on the system to pay just the debt
And
service.
you said you would agree that you thought there would be 2,300 to 2,500.
No, I'm saying that's how many potential customers you have. I'm not saying that's what we're
And,
going to
and what I'm saying
But if
is
they're saying
that
it's a 53% take rate, and now we're
50%.
50%, nice and easy. And we say that there's a potential of 2,500 customers in the city of Chanute. A 50% take rate now is completely different than if you're saying at 4,300 people.
Well, There are 4,300 premises that are potential customers in the city of
you can't
Chanute.
say, no, because my grandma's never going to be a customer. You can't say
The
that
bar-
everybody's
hold
a
on,
customer.
hold on.
That's why you're not saying it's
That's why it's
100%. That's why you're saying
50%.
Right, but then,
So your grandmother may not, but his might.
yeah, but
that's
50%
50%.
going to skew the thing, because you need to, like, how many potential customers are there in the city of Chanute? And we've agreed, what, 2,500 or something like that. You've got a profit.
No, the
turn to
potential
sell.
customers
Potential
are
customers is
more than
4,300.
it's 4,300.
But-
What they're saying is
and you know
half
you're
of
never
that.
going to get at least
Right.
2,000.
But that's the
We're saying that's right.
potential
Well,
customers.
if
And they're
I,
under
you're
50.
And then you
right.
said
If it's
2,300.
4,300 and I never get 2,000, I still made my 50%. I'm good.
No, because you're, no.
And the other thing you're
That's your
talking about, you're
No,
talking
but
about
that's what I'm saying. You got to go take off how many potential. I'm not saying 53%. You're saying is the national average on what? On total
potential
homes,
customers.
or how many internet service
The take
people that are
rate
taking
is
internet
50.
service right now?
The typical take rate, the typical municipal take rate is 54%.
Of what? Of potential.
Of the potential
everybody, or how many internet
customers in their
subscribers there are?
community. The potential
All right.
customers in their community.
Let's
Now-
go back to something else though.
Let's
You
go
ask,
back, though.
you're talking about putting it to a vote.
Mhm.
And I understand that. The other thing you got to look at, go back 100 years ago, people didn't want the electric because you don't need it. You've got natural gas lights, it's free, we don't need electricity. Commissioners made a tough decision, they did it, it worked out. Less,
You
what
saying
is it,
electric
20,
wasn't
hold
voted
on. I don't believe so.
The original electric.
It was
utility
on the
voted
commission.
No.
Okay.
Then you go back to when they built the power plant out here, 85, it's about what I heard, I wasn't around here. That was another one, the commissioners got booted off the commission because they voted to go ahead and do it because people didn't want to spend the money to put that
The
in.
one out south?
Yeah.
Oh.
They didn't want that done. People were complaining about it. But now it's a great thing that we have it. Because people look at that big number, they get scared. They don't look at what's going to happen in the future. And that's what we're trying to do here is say, you got to look in the future. You can't look at right now what is going to happen this instant. What is the best for the city 20 years from today?
Phil,
And nobody knows.
Phil, you,
I mean, it could take
No,
it down.
you,
don't
you,
know.
you were living here like I was living here in the
Well, there's a
late
big age difference.
when they did the $1 million parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in those commissioners all lost their election. The city manager was gone afterwards, and that was very unpopular. If you took a poll now, basically 20 years, roughly
Mhm.
20 years later, I think you would discover that what was the city manager's folly has been a fabulous investment
Right.
in this community.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying though.
And,
Like,
and,
let's
and,
take
and the
pool.
question and the question about my undergrad degree is in political science, specializing in state and local government and urban and region planning. And one of the things I used to joke, I'm not joke about, I will tell you, I was critical of Mr. Walker as the city manager. And the reason I was critical, Phil, is because of my state and local government classes that I took in at least 9 different hours. They said the evaluation of a city manager is if the city manager is in a city for longer than 5 years and doesn't get fired, he's being a bad city manager because he's doing what may be popular, but it's not what is best for the community in the long term. And so I was very critical of Walker, not because of the parking lot, but because there were some things that we probably could have done that would have been better for our community. But instead of taking risks to do things that were better for the community, he was always doing things to please the elected officials. Now, sometimes there are going to be decisions, and you've been an elected official, the 3 of us are elected officials, decisions that you may have to make that are extremely unpopular right now that are best for the community. And you have at least three incumbents that are on that have made the determination that they think this is best for the community. And I respect that. And they may pay for that in the
And see,
upcoming
that's the
election.
thing. Why go through all that? Like when we did the pool, we did. I mean, obviously we had to because of the sales tax deal and stuff like that. Nobody got voted off because of that project because the community spoke. They wanted what they got, or they wanted.
Well, I can tell you
and they got
about
it.
I can tell you about a county issue that didn't.
Well, I know. Well, county is messed up anyway. But I'm just saying that, like, we all know that. But
well,
I'm
in
just saying though that, like, and you
2000,
brought up the right examples. I mean, we did a power plant, and then a bunch of people got booted off and stuff like that. We did a parking lot. People got booted off. City manager got let go and stuff. We did a pool that's was well more than that. Well, I don't know, with inflation and everything, than that parking lot. But we had a vote on it. The people spoke. They got their pool. I don't hear a word
I would
about it.
venture to guess
I
20
didn't
years
vote at all.
later.
But the way
And
that
the pool
pool
was
was
doing great,
financed
and everybody loved
required
it. I
that
mean-
vote by law.
Right, but the thing is,
That's
I think
not
more
the-
people got behind it, and commissioners didn't get voted out of office. We didn't get a city manager. I mean, the city manager got fired, but the city manager didn't get let go. None of that stuff had to happen. All we did is had a vote. The people felt like they spoke. I never hear a word about that. People don't come up to me, oh, that dang cool. You know what? It was voted on. The people wanted it, so we did the right project, and we pushed ahead, and we didn't have to. Now you want to go through the turmoil just so that we don't have a vote? I mean, I understand that you need to be forethought and stuff like that, but in a small community like that, where we're all living neighbors and go to church together, I mean, why not just, you know what? This is a huge investment for our community. We want to know what you guys think. Let's put it to a vote and just let it. I mean, how many thousands of dollars have we spent on all? Not you, Michael. Obviously, but I mean, the marketing people and stuff like that. The girls from Tennessee or whatever they're from and stuff like that. We could have easily paid for a vote through all that stuff and just let the people vote on it, and then they can understand it, and we can move on.
Now, you said the county's jacked up. Please do not comment on things of which I guarantee you, if you call and ask Randy Neely, I don't believe your statement about it wouldn't cost as much to do a vote as whatever they paid for that, because I don't believe
No,
that's
putting it on the ballot's like $4,600, and we paid those girls what, $50,000? I mean, I'm just saying though that just like
Really?
that's probably my biggest thing.
$4,600.
Those
Well,
girls
to add
are
on to it,
those
Al,
girls
that's-
are
you know, I
technical
gotta check
experts
with
in their field. Just so that you know, they're not
Okay.
just girls from Tennessee.
We can
That's
disagree with
not,
that too, but I'm just saying. I mean, why not just? I mean, I would just like to see a few things. One, I'd like to see us actually get the final plan. Like, this is what we're going. This is what we're going to put out there. We're not going to. If it's meter fees, it's meter fees. If it's not meter fees, if we have to go up to $50, then it's $50 or something like that. Just make it work so that we have a plan so we can all understand it.
Plan-
Rather than like, well, and then you hear different things from different people, and it's like, can't we just get that one thing going? Why can't we just have I mean, this is a huge project, and I hope to God if we do it, that it's wildly successful.
I'm getting the high sign from our host, but I'll let you make a couple of closing comments if you want, and we'll go around and we'll do that. And then
Wrap it up.
since I had to do it, I'll get the last word.
Okay, good. I guess my thing is just that, I mean, I would like to see it voted on. I just think that would bring more of the community together so that everybody has their, their say in it. That'll throw the, on their thing so that they do need to do the research on what they're voting on and stuff so people can understand it and stuff. I think having a final plan out there, this is exactly how we're going to do it, and this is what we're putting out there as a vote, and this is, and then we can say, okay, now let's try to explain all this stuff rather than, I mean, the meters were a done deal until a couple months ago. Now all of a sudden, it's, well, we may take it out. We need a higher take rate. We may adjust the price instead. It's like, let's just get the one plan, put it up to a vote so that everybody can, and that kind of gets everybody behind it, like the pool and stuff, so that everybody can push forward. Maybe that will increase the amount of take rate that you're going to get and stuff like that. But I mean, I'd really love to see it borrowed on its own. I don't think that's even close to being possible. I mean, it has to go on the electric and gas. That part obviously makes me nervous. But I just think that if we got a final plan that we can all know what it's going to be, instead of everybody talking their own different scenarios, which I think is the reason that it gets so confusing in the public. Have a vote on it. That way we're all in there, and then once it passes, I mean, there's been many things that passed that I disagreed with, but I'm not going to sit there. I mean, a housing addition that I voted against, but I'm not going to be the one out there trying to stop houses from going in. I mean, you bet. With Blue Green, I tried all I could. So that would just be my
All right,
thoughts. So.
Mr. Houston,
I think
closing
that
thoughts?
I have adult children. I have adult children who are in college. I have adult children who had expressed that they really had no desire to ever return to Chanute. When they heard that there is a possibility that they may be able to have fiber to the home and sufficient internet service, all of a sudden my two adult children have both expressed a desire to return to their hometown. I think the additional fiber allows us to meet better needs. I personally believe with the way internet service is going now, and entertainment services going now. Within 5 years, Cable One will cease to exist in Chanute. I think DirecTV sees what's coming as well. HBO is saying that I believe by 2017 they will only be on internet and not provided through satellite things. If we've already gone ahead and have the infrastructure in place and we have fiber, it's not just the internet that we benefit from. It allows us a significant amount of options available for entertainment. I look at it as, yes, I think it's better for a business. I know the benefits the hospital has been able to have from remote health. I know the benefits the mental health center, where I'm a board member, has had from being able to do remote services because of the expanded fiber. I know the benefit that I would have in my own home and with my kids if we had expanded fiber. I think it's a good idea. I think the numbers, if you just do the simple math, work even at a low estimate, that over a 20-year period would benefit the community. And I think it's best. I respect the commissioners who are now up for election, who made the decision. And it's not an easy decision. It was a tough decision. And I would say, I hear what Mr. Cheney says about a vote, and I'm not opposed to people voting on things, but votes don't always settle things and people go along. This city was greatly divided, probably 8 years ago, when we spent a substantial amount of money to build 2 new schools and to remodel a junior high. Some of that division still has not come together, even though there was a vote that took place. Yes, people aren't out there protesting and saying tear the building down, but there are still a lot of people who complain about the taxes that they have to pay as a result of a new construction in Chanute, a new construction in St. Paul, and a new construction in Erie. Votes are great, but they don't always solve and give us the best things that are for the community. And people don't always vote for what's best for the community or what's right. If that was the case, civil rights would have come through in this country way before. Voting, and don't say that, take that to think I'm belittling the importance of the ballot box. I'm not. But what is best for the community is not always popular. I think we would have over 45 to 50% of the population who would support this. But I also think we already have things in place now. I know the representative from the State Department of Commerce, which would be a supporter of or employee of the present governor, came and spoke at the city commission and said, we are way ahead of the game and the benefits are there. And that's not somebody who's being paid for by the city. That's not a marketing person for the city. That was somebody that didn't have anything to do with it. Came in and talked about how good and how forward-thinking the city commission was to put this forward.
Thank you.
There are negatives, but I think the positives outweigh the negatives.
Mr. Regner?
The studies on this thing we've done 96, 02, 03, 05, 06, 10, 2 and 11, 12, 3 and 13 have all been positive for the fiber project. Like Linus was saying, putting it to a vote does not always assure that the right thing's going to happen. Like I brought up the power plant deals, they were not popular. However, they've been extremely successful for the city. I keep hearing you guys are putting this on taxpayers. I'm a taxpayer. I pay my share of plenty of taxes, things like that. I've got family taxpayers. I'm not doing this and I'm getting some kind of benefit that the average person doesn't. I'm putting myself in the same position. I think this will work. I think that it will be successful and it will help the city in the future. You've got to grow or you're going to stagnate and die. And that's really where I stand at. You have to grow.
I guess my points would be, number one, I think that the amount of money that's going to be spent on this project, if you're going to do it and you're not going to put it to a vote, you have to educate people. But I really believe it should be put to a vote. Not because I don't think it'll pass a vote, because I don't think you guys want to carry that on your back. You shouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to if I was in your position. I would want the support of everybody around me. And if you just pass it through, I feel like that causes diversity. Where if you make people vote on it, if I see that 60% of the people in Chanute want it, or 60% of the voters want it, then, you know, I feel like if 60% want it, then it's a good thing, and I'll support it too. But the other thing I would like to see is the actual numbers of, you know, total costs, not just your revenue bonds, but your cost of operating, your cost of maintaining, how many years before it has to be updated, things like this, you know, and put out to the people, because I mean, they're not just Phil has the numbers. I'm sure he got them from you, correct?
I think he got them through the city.
Okay.
They've been publicized, and I'm sorry for
That's okay.
jumping in there, but those numbers have been made available a lot of times.
Yeah, I got it. Somehow. Email, I think. I got it through an email.
But I mean, I just think it's a lot of money to spend, and I mean, I don't doubt that it's a great service, because it obviously is. That's why it's becoming the new thing. But at the same rate, technology is changing so fast, and has changed since we put fiber in. I mean, in '84 or whenever. I mean, we went from dial-up internet on a lot of homes to where everybody's on high speed, and everybody's getting more mobile all the time. It's going more Wi-Fi and everything else. I mean, that's happening a lot. And I realize you've got data hogs that want to watch movies and everything, but to me, it's about the cost. And if it's, you know, if it's $60, $40, who cares? Whatever it is, you know, let's figure out the real numbers, where it's going to be at. Let's figure out the plan. Let's go with the plan. Let's present it to the people, and let's vote on it. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Well, I think this election and this whole fiber thing kind of coincide with one another. But I feel as though us as a community, in order to move forward and not be stagnant at 10,000 people like we have been for the last 100 years, we're going to have to do stuff that's progressive as a community to try to move us forward, to move us into that next century. My generation below me, a lot of them are always on the internet. They're always on Facebook. They're always on Twitter. They're watching Netflix. They're watching Hulu. I mean, my kids, they got a Netflix account. That's what they watch. They don't even watch cable anymore. They just watch Netflix because they can get their TV shows. And that's truly where the internet is going in the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, you're going to go out to ABC. You're going to sign up for their services if you want them. You're going to go out to ESPN. You're going to sign up for their services if you want them. You're not going to have a cable provider. They're cutting that middleman out, in essence. These networks are. They're cutting the middleman out. They're putting all their stuff over the internet. And this project is a project that right now, yes, it's a risky project. There is some inherent risk with it. I mean, we're assuming that there's going to be a take rate, a certain take rate. We're assuming we're going to sell for this amount. We're assuming that some of the costs that we have calculated in over the 20-year period are going to be accurate and actual, but those things can all change. You're right, they can. Those things do change. But it's a decision that has to be made ultimately of, are we going to do it? Are we not going to do it? And I would like to have the city's interest at the best heart when we do make a decision of this, and that's why I've been so asking to make sure that it does cash flow properly, because I don't want to make a decision where it's not going to cash flow properly, then be like Scott said, have the weight on my shoulders. Oh, you pass something through and it's been a complete failure and bust. I don't want that. You're right. But I've been very cautious about looking through everything to make sure it does cash flow properly. And like I stated earlier, the 50% take rate is a take rate that I think is probably a little bit higher than I would like it. There's more risk with it. And I think ultimately we've got to figure out what the plan is. But I think fiber to the home is definitely viable in Chanute, and it's something that needs to be done going forward, or we're going to be playing catch up.
Okay. I guess I would say that there has been a plan that has been fairly stable. And I say fairly stable. It's not an absolute, because it is a plan, and it is subject to additional input and modification. But the basic premise has been to deploy fiber to every premise in Chanute, offer those services to any entity that wants to take those services and not force it on anyone. Based on the analysis that has been completed, by a number of engineering firms. This project looks like a financial success for the community, not only in the short term but long term, and is potentially a key to improving the quality of life for the elderly folks in Chanute and the student population, as well as anyone else that desires to take service. Someone here said, well, what happens if the Cable One comes in and lowers its price? That would be great. So that means you get a benefit from the city building this network without even taking any service from it. So we would welcome that, and I don't think that the model is or should be afraid of competition from other entities coming in. We're peered with Cox Communications and provide services to them through the city's infrastructure. We do that with Midwest Connections and are talking to other providers that would like to deliver services over this infrastructure. So yes, there is some risk, but I believe that we have managed those risks and done everything that we can to go in and make sure that we've used conservative assumptions in the basis and foundation for this model that's been reviewed by a variety of technical folks, and we believe that this model will work, and I applaud Chanute for taking these steps forward. They're in the national limelight. There's a lot of folks across the country that are just enamored with what the city of Chanute is trying to accomplish. So hopefully the folks local to Chanute will see that and make the decision to support the project. So that's my perspective. So,
Well, I'd
other
like
than
to
that-
say thank you for everyone coming down and having this discussion in this forum tonight. I think it was very good discussion, very good back and forth.
I just hope that after the end, we don't have to, because I've heard it so many times that I'm just being, even people running for council, that I'm negative if you don't support something. I think just having the
No.
discussion rather than, I don't know why we can't talk about it. I mean, we're one small community. We all know each other.
Yeah.
We grew up in the same neighborhood. So it's like, we can have the discussion without
Sure.
painting somebody positive or negative and stuff. Let's just have the discussion. That way we can all get behind it. And then as an entire community, we push it forward rather than trying to label people just because they want to ask a question or two.
I'm
And I would
willing
say
to
the
do this
question-
again.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
question about the vote, we have an upcoming city commission election
Yeah.
that I would think is really going to be a referendum on fiber.
Yeah.
I
Well,
disagree somewhat.
yeah, I mean, that's what, I do too. I mean, I don't think it should be that way. I mean, I think it should just be on the ballot, here's the proposal that we're talking about. Do you want to,
And I hear
Rather
that.
than just
I'm just
pulling
saying,
one.
if
Right.
all three of the incumbents won, since the fiber issue did pass unanimously,
Mhm.
I would think there would be somebody who could say that there is a
but I mean, I
mandate.
don't think that if all three of them lost it, that's the thing that we just absolutely stop the thing. Because I
Yeah.
mean, I'm with Tim. I mean, I'm sure it is a great service. I mean, I'd love to have it in my house. I want to make sure that it's going to be viable, that all, we know all the numbers, we've got everything done, and I'd take it in my house. That's fine. I mean, I'd rather support it, knowing that not all of them, but more of the dollars would stay here. Hopefully, we'd hire the people here that would splice the fiber and stuff like that, create jobs right here and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'd love to get behind it, but I just think that just keep having the discussions so we can talk about it rather than,
Anytime you
people
want
that
to
are
sit
negative
down
and
and go
stuff.
through any of it, I'm available.
Well, I appreciate
to you,
that.
You know that. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.